It was an ordinary Tuesday morning at the busy warehouse. The sun had just started to peek through the windows, casting a warm glow over the room. The hum of machines and the shuffle of workers moving crates filled the air. As usual, the employees were busy unloading goods, trying to meet their targets for the day. Among them was a man who stood out, though not for the reasons anyone would have expected. His name was Marcus. Tall, well-built, and with a quiet presence that drew little attention. He wore the usual uniform, a simple black t-shirt and jeans, nothing that screamed authority. Marcus had just started working at the warehouse, keeping to himself, doing his job. He wasn't there to make waves, just to get by and earn his paycheck like everyone else. Little did they know, he wasn't just another employee. He was, in fact, the new boss. A few hours into the shift, a commotion started near the storage area. A worker, Jake, had spotted something out of place. It was a small box, tucked behind a pile of other packages. It wasn't a regular shipment. The box didn't have a label, and that raised some eyebrows. "Hey, look what we've got here," Jake called out, lifting the box and holding it up for everyone to see. "Does this belong to anyone?" At first, everyone ignored him. But then, a few workers began to gather around. Marcus, who had been quietly working nearby, glanced over, curious about the sudden attention. "I think this is from one of the shipment orders," another worker, Linda, said, eyeing the box suspiciously. That's when Jake, his face twisted with suspicion, looked over at Marcus. "Hey, you didn't see anything, did you?" he asked, his tone sharp. Marcus frowned, not understanding what Jake meant. "What are you talking about?" "I'm saying, this box wasn't supposed to be here, and we don't know where it came from. Funny, right? You just showed up here and suddenly there's a box like this?" Marcus was taken aback. He didn't know what Jake was implying. "I'm just working, man. I haven't touched anything." But Jake wasn't convinced. His eyes narrowed. "Really? Because it looks like you've been sneaking things around here." The other workers were starting to turn their heads, whispering among themselves. A few of them looked at Marcus with doubt in their eyes. They didn't know him well enough to trust him, and in their minds, the idea that someone new could be involved in something shady wasn't that hard to believe. "Jake, cut it out," Linda said, stepping in. "There's no reason to accuse him." But it was too late. Jake was already digging into his pockets, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling security. I don't trust him. He's the only one who's been acting strange." Marcus stood there, completely stunned, as the others began to murmur around him. His heart started to race. He couldn't believe what was happening. He was just trying to do his job. But now, all eyes were on him, and they were accusing him of theft. And there, standing in the middle of it all, Marcus realized something terrifying. The last thing he wanted was to cause trouble, but now the trouble had found him. The room grew tense as Jake dialed security, his fingers trembling slightly as he stared Marcus down. The other workers stood around, some of them whispering quietly, others just watching the scene unfold. It felt like everyone was against Marcus in that moment, and the weight of it pressed down on him, making it hard to breathe. "I'm telling you, something's off about him," Jake muttered to the security officer on the phone, his voice low but filled with certainty. "I think he's trying to steal something." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He wanted to shout, to explain himself, but the words caught in his chest. His mind was spinning. How had things gotten so out of hand so quickly? All he had wanted was a fresh start, to lay low and do his job without drawing attention. But now, in front of all these people, he was being accused of theft. "Marcus, just relax, okay?" Linda said, her voice softer now. She didn't believe the accusation, but it was hard to ignore the mounting tension in the room. He nodded, though it did little to calm his nerves. The seconds felt like hours as he waited for security to arrive, each tick of the clock making his stomach twist tighter. The longer the silence dragged on, the more the doubt seemed to spread among the workers. "Come on," Jake continued, his eyes never leaving Marcus. "Why don't you just admit it? You were trying to steal something, and now you're caught." Marcus felt a flush of anger rise up in him, but he held it in. He knew that getting angry would only make things worse. He needed to stay calm, even though everything inside him was screaming to lash out. That's when the door to the warehouse opened, and a figure stepped inside. It was Dave, the warehouse manager, and with him, another man in a suit. Hey, what's going on here? Dave asked, looking around at the gathered workers. His eyes landed on Marcus, and he raised an eyebrow. Why is everyone standing around? Jake was quick to point it out. This guy, Marcus. We found this box, and he's acting all weird about it. I think he's trying to steal from us. Dave looked at Marcus, then back at Jake, his face unreadable. Is that true? He asked, his tone serious but not angry. Marcus shook his head, finally finding his voice. No, I haven't done anything. I don't know where that box came from. Dave paused, studying him for a long moment, then turned to the other workers. All right, let's all just calm down. We'll figure this out. Just as the tension in the room seemed to be easing slightly, the man in the suit spoke up. I'm afraid we'll have to get to the bottom of this. We're not taking chances with theft. Marcus looked at the man in the suit, his stomach sinking. He could tell this wasn't going to end well for him, no matter how innocent he was. His heart pounded in his chest. The worst part? No one knew the truth. No one knew that he wasn't just another employee. He was their new boss. The man in the suit, a stern-looking man with glasses, stepped forward and gave Marcus a sharp look. He had the air of someone who wasn't easily fooled, and Marcus could already feel the weight of judgment in his gaze. The tension in the room had reached its breaking point. Everyone was waiting for something, anything, to happen. Dave, the warehouse manager, stepped in between the workers and Marcus. Let's not jump to conclusions here, he said firmly. We'll look into this before anyone gets accused of anything. Jake scoffed. Look, I'm just saying what we all saw. It's obvious. Before anyone could respond, the man in the suit pulled out his phone and started typing quickly. We'll review the security footage, he said in a cold, authoritative voice. If there's any truth to these accusations, we'll handle it. Marcus's heart sank as the words hit him. He couldn't believe this was happening. He never imagined he'd end up in a situation like this. But even as the room seemed to be closing in around him, a strange calm settled over him. Maybe it was the knowledge that at some point, the truth would come out. Maybe it was just sheer exhaustion from holding it all in. After a few more tense moments, Dave turned back to Marcus. Can you stay here for a while, Marcus? We'll review everything, and then we'll talk. Marcus nodded, though the words felt like lead in his mouth. Of course, he muttered, his voice barely audible. The man in the suit, still typing on his phone, motioned for the workers to go back to their tasks. They scattered, but some of them couldn't resist glancing back at Marcus. Their eyes were full of suspicion, their whispers heavy with doubt. As the minutes passed, Marcus felt more and more like a stranger in this place. He had worked in warehouses before, done everything right, never stolen a thing. But now, here he was, standing accused of something he hadn't done, in front of people who didn't know him. And yet, there was something deeper that hurt even more. He wasn't just any employee in this warehouse. He was the new boss, the one who would be running the place. But no one knew that. He wasn't sure how to feel about that. Was he supposed to reveal himself now? Would it change anything? Then, finally, after what felt like an eternity, the door to the warehouse opened again. Dave stepped inside with the man in the suit, both of them holding phones in their hands. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Dave looked at Marcus and spoke, his voice a little softer than before. We've seen the footage, Marcus. We were able to see what happened. Marcus stood up straighter, his heart racing again, but this time with a sense of hope. Jake had already started to speak up, eager to have his accusation proven right. Well, he demanded, what did you find? The man in the suit cleared his throat. It seems there was a misunderstanding, he said, looking at Marcus for a brief moment before addressing everyone. We checked the footage, and Marcus didn't do anything wrong. In fact, he was completely unaware of that box. It was just misplaced. The relief that washed over Marcus was almost overwhelming. He exhaled sharply, the weight in his chest lightening. The suspicion that had lingered over him began to lift, but it was quickly replaced by another feeling, confusion. Jake's face turned bright red. He opened his mouth, as if to protest, but the words caught in his throat. But I was sure. Jake, it's over, Dave said, cutting him off. You jumped to conclusions. Marcus didn't steal anything, and I expect you to apologize. Marcus could feel the eyes on him as the workers began to murmur among themselves, some of them embarrassed, others just quiet. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Dave turned to the man in the suit. "Let's take this outside, Mr. Williams," Dave said. "It's time Marcus officially meets the team." That's when it hit him. The man in the suit wasn't just some security officer. He was a corporate executive, and Marcus wasn't just an employee. He was their new boss. As Dave and Mr. Williams walked toward the exit, Marcus stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. His mind was racing. He had come here looking for a fresh start, trying to escape from the past. And now he found himself at the center of an accusation, and somehow still holding on to the truth. Before he could gather his thoughts, Dave turned back to him with a soft smile. "You're probably wondering what's going on," he said. "I'll explain everything once we're outside. It's a lot to take in, but don't worry, this will all make sense soon enough." Marcus barely heard him. All he could think about was how, in that brief moment of confusion, everyone had doubted him. They hadn't seen him as a leader, just another employee. In their eyes, he was just the new guy. As they stepped outside into the cool air, Dave finally spoke again. "I know this isn't how you expected to be introduced, but there's something you should know. Marcus, you're not just a new hire here, you're the new CEO of this warehouse." Marcus blinked, unable to process the words. "What? What do you mean?" Mr. Williams, who had been quiet up until now, spoke up. "We brought you in because of your experience and vision. You were handpicked to lead this team. This whole situation, it wasn't what we had planned, but now it's time for you to step up and take charge." Marcus couldn't believe it. All this time, he'd thought he was just another worker, someone trying to blend in. But in reality, he was in charge of everything. He was the boss. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The workers, the accusations, the whispers, none of it made sense anymore. He turned to look at Dave. "I had no idea, I just wanted to get by, to work like everyone else." Dave nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know. But the truth is, people don't always see things the way they are. They see you as just another face in the crowd. And unfortunately, that's what happened here. But that doesn't change the fact that you're in charge now. And this is your chance to lead." Marcus took a deep breath, still processing everything. It felt like the world had shifted beneath him. But as the weight of the situation settled in, he realized something important. He wasn't just a bystander anymore. He was the one who would shape what happened next. "Are you ready to do this?" Mr. Williams asked, his voice steady, yet filled with a hint of challenge. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, I am." Back inside the warehouse, the workers had gathered again, their faces a mix of confusion and anticipation. Some of them still looked at Marcus with uncertainty, but there was a new air of respect in the way they carried themselves. Jake, the one who had accused Marcus of stealing, was nowhere to be seen. Marcus couldn't help but wonder how he would face the others, especially now that they all knew who he truly was. "All right, everyone," Marcus said, his voice louder than he had ever intended. The workers turned their attention to him, their eyes wide, some filled with awe. "I know there's been some confusion today, but I'm here to make sure this place runs right. I'm your new CEO. I know it's going to take some time for all of us to adjust, but I'm here to lead with honesty, integrity, and respect." The room was silent for a moment, then Linda stepped forward. She had been one of the few who hadn't jumped to conclusions. She smiled at him, giving him a nod of approval. "We're glad to have you, Marcus. We'll make this work." Marcus felt a rush of relief. In that moment, he knew this wouldn't be easy. He knew there would be challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them head on. After all, he wasn't just a worker anymore. He was the one who would set the tone for everything that came next. As the workers slowly dispersed, getting back to their duties, Marcus stood there for a moment longer, letting the reality of his new role sink in. The day had started with accusations and fear, but now it ended with the first step towards something bigger. And with that, Marcus knew he was ready to prove himself. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the story. If it resonated with you, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment below, and share it with your friends. Let's spread the word. Subscribe if you want to see more heartwarming and dramatic tales that'll keep you hooked. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to bring you more stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.